He was building up this fortress thing, and we have a deal where somehow they have to get rid of him, and then he can flee away. And my first thought is he'd flee away on a fell beast, and you could see like the wings flapping and go. But then again, we can't really have them have fell beasts in the beginning, because then it brings up the question: why didn't they just bring the fell beasts to Bree, and then they could just like they probably would have gotten there faster, and then they could just eat all the hobbits as they're walking up to Bree or whatever it is, you know. Or you mentioned the other thing where they're chasing like Frodo and the hobbits, and they jump on the boat, and apparently they can't take the ring wraith can't take his horse into the water, or something like that. If he had a fell beast, that wouldn't. So I have to presume that the fell beasts were just like they weren't born yet or something. They're being crafted in Mordor, and anyway. So Dol Guldur pulls on quite nicely, right? It connects to the Hobbit's tale in a couple of ways. One, it's Gandalf is in disguise. How does Gandalf disguise himself? I'd like to know. Does he? I don't know, because he's a pretty iconic figure. It'd just be weird seeing him in anything besides his iconicness as gray or white. Anyway, but Gandalf in disguise is sneaking around Dol Guldur, trying to find out who's in charge of the place, and he finds Thrain, is it? Thorin's dad, who can't even remember his own name. But he's got the map for the Lonely Mountain and the associated key, right? And because of that, he brings that to the dwarves. And then later he leaves them and he goes, where? Back to Dol Guldur, or he goes to the White Council first and all that. And then they do something. What do they do? There's a big battle. I would like to avoid big battle. I would like to. There's a battle, Hobbit, and there's a battle in Towers and King. There's nothing really in Fellowship. There's like it's dramatic at the moment. This is a great example of, at the end of a Fellowship, there's a dramatic encounter thing with, like, a few dozen Uruk-hai and our 9 Fellowship dudes. And that's dramatic all by itself. That's what I mean by these things that, like, okay, Hobbit, tone it down. Don't have these armies too huge. Don't have the war go on too long. Don't have anything be too big. But it can still be very dramatic. And then, again, everything else is awesome in comparison. But we have all these battles, right? I don't want to have much battle in Journeys of Gandalf the Grey. I would do, if there's going to be battle, how about they, almost do it in flashback? Or how am I supposed to do it on the side? Or you could do a siege. There's no real sieges in Lord of the Rings. There's always a full frontal assault. What if they just surround the place, and then just, like, wait for the occupants to starve? Or something like that, and then they gotta do something crafty with magic and stuff. Some crafty magic Saruman thing. He gets involved and does something cool that like opens up their gates or destroys their defenses somehow and allows our guys to go. What guys? Do we have an Elvish army? Do we have a something like that? If so, where are they the rest of the series? Well, presumably they're off defending themselves against aforementioned simultaneous attacks from Sauron and all friends and all that. I mentioned earlier, Saruman looking at a map. He says, like, he'll attack everywhere at once, and he may he'll probably focus everything on one place, while everything else is like minor forces everywhere, and then one main force on one of these. He's like, there's Gondor, and Rohan, Lonely Mountain, and he'll come from Arnor, and here comes, and this line I like, puts his finger on the point of the map. It says, he shall move against Isengard before the end. He shall move against, as if, like, Isengard would be the last stronghold of the good guys, which makes sense, because this is where, like, the Great White Wizard lives, and, all these important things happen, that Isengard would be, like, the place for the good guys. And I like to say the phrase, not that he shall attack Isengard, he shall move against Isengard. And he does. He moves against them by corrupting them, by corrupting specifically Saruman, who apparently is the only guy in charge of Isengard. I kind of wondered about that. Like, before the orcs all showed up, was he alone? And I guess there was Treebeard. That'd be cool. Gandalf has a brief conversation with Treebeard. Just, like, and just without any expectation that you're ever going to see this Treebeard dude again, But then when we get to Two Towers, and it's like, they say some of the trees will talk to each other, even move, And then they climb up into the thing, and they're like, oh wait, that's Treebeard! I know that guy! Gandalf talked to him, oh, how cool is that? I'd forgotten all about that, I figured he probably just ran away when, they started chopping down all the trees, something like that. They're really cool. But yeah, so they So the Dol Guldur thing, which links up to the Hobbit's tale like twice, and then they do everything. But let's say it was the Witch King of Angmar, and then he can ride away or get away somehow. And they have a very, very strong, deep, quiet feeling of Sauron has suffered a delay, but not a defeat. It's like, okay, this has helped. But Saruman's got to say it is a matter of only a few decades, Gandalf, before he grows. He has enough power to assault all of Middle Earth. You know. In fact, you could have a thing at the ending of either The Hobbit or this movie, because they sort of interlace. It's not one or the other. It's like an in-between quote. Of Gandalf visiting the Shire. Maybe he even sees Frodo, a younger Frodo. That'd be interesting. And then just leaves with this sort of sentiment of, you know, it's so nice that the Shire here is calm and peaceful and isolated, because the big wide world is so much more dangerous and so much more frightening and stuff. And you sort of get the sense as he's on his horse or maybe a cart or something, leaving the Shire at the end of one or both of these films, or maybe in the middle of one of them. I don't know. Leaving the Shire, and you sort of get a sense of like, wow, you know, that Gandalf guy, he really is taking on the full force of measure to be accomplished in the world. He's dealing with the big leagues, as it were. Oh, man. So, that's all of that. I just want to explain. The Eagles. Just establish the Eagles, they're very independent. That's their deal. They don't want to get involved in everything. Again, specifically say, I think they become more reluctant with every favor that I ask of them. And I fear we cannot depend on them in the time to come or something. Also establishes communication with the Eagles. Have them talk to not necessarily that moth thing, maybe a bird thing, whatever. He whispers to it, perhaps, you know, when they're in the trees hiding from the wargs and the goblins, which are described as wolves. I didn't realize that. After seeing the movies, I sort of assumed that they'd been like hyena-type things the whole time. But no, they're more like wolves, apparently. Maybe they're like subspecies, but he's up in the tree and he's like talks to a bird or something and flies away, and then that brings in the Eagles. Or something, you know. That all could be interesting. Maybe here's something. You could see Radagast in Journeys of Gandalf the Grey. You could run into him, have a conversation, do something, you know. Establish other wizards out there. Establish this guy's sort of leaning towards being a pacifist almost and not involving himself, which is sort of what Tom Bombadil was. He was like the pacifist. He was like this interesting guy that didn't actually involve himself with anything outside of his own little chunk of land. So Radagast could almost take on that role, story-wise. Or for that matter, we could actually see Tom Bombadil in Journeys of Gandalf the Grey. Wouldn't that be cool? Okay. So that's all that is there. Again, this sort of series of almost unconnected things. Gandalf is riding over here, and he deals with some people, and goes over there, and talks to some here, and then just slowly, then just establishing the world. And to give it some semblance of story, there's slowly figuring out what to do about Dol Guldur. And possibly at the end of one or both of these films, you know, he could mention either, you know, if Bilbo ever reaches his 11th birthday, I'll be here. or it could be more specific, like, oh, well, you know, Bilbo's 11th birthday's coming up soon, so I'll ride off that way. You think, well, how does that work with the timeline? Remember, with Journeys, where we kind of jump forward a lot. We encounter a bunch of different things. So you could do getting rid of Dol Guldur and the Witch King or whatever, or Sauron himself, however that works out. And then there's another thing of, like, you know, some 60 years later, whatever it was, who's having another conversation with Sauron and ends that with saying, well, my old friend Bilbo is having a birthday party, and he just rides off in his little cart. And then Fellowship of the Ring, here he comes. Aha, Gandalf, our presumptuous main character. And then he ends up dying. And you're like, oh crap! And Frodo ends up being even more important than Gandalf. But Frodo was a hobbit, we didn't even know.